What's going on, guys? Back with just one more Mocha video. I said I was done at least until the release of the combat achievements, but I decided to give this one a go. We're going to be rocking a setup with no twisted bow or Zerite crossbow, so we're just going to be in Elite Void with the Scorching Bow, and we're going to try our hand at completing a 1 through 8 delve. I've also replaced the scythe with a Osmumthum's Fang, just to bring down the gear setup a little bit. Now, in place of the Zerite crossbow, I also brought in a blowpipe instead. That's going to be good for healing as well. That's going to be our spec weapon rather than the ZCB. Let's see how this goes. In some ways, this is going to be easier because we don't have to switch between the twisted bow and the scorching bow to deal with the larvae. I do believe that the first initial waves are going to be largely the same as if I was going to be using a twisted bow, perhaps just a little bit slower, maybe a couple more boulders to deal with, but yeah, we'll see how this goes. Throughout this run, I'll try to do my best to explain my thought process as well, just as I did in a previous video. So here in these early waves, whenever the boulder comes out, I do make it a point to see what color it is. If you didn't know, well, you will know now that a brown boulder indicates a range attack first, and a blue boulder indicates a mage attack first. So you don't have to actually pay too much attention to the projectiles coming at you. You just need to know which one comes first and prepare yourself for that. And then once you take a glance at the boulder, you do want to make sure you move out of the way from where you're standing, because a rock will form under you, stall you out, and do some damage. So here we are on Delve 2. Nice and simple. And we got the melee punish. We do have our little 4-way switch with a Fang. This is going to be better in some ways because the Fang doesn't have 3 hit splats like the scythe that I've been using. I'm going to be doing less damage, obviously. However, it's also going to cause less poison tiles to form on the ground. Here we are, Delve 2 complete. And on to Delve 3. I've never used a blowpipe in the setup before, but I do know plenty of other people who use it. I need to figure out when is the best window in time to use the blowpipe. I'm currently sitting at full health though, in fact overhealed off of an angler, so no need for that. I imagine it's going to be pretty ideal during car phase on Delves 5 and beyond. Also, in this setup, I actually have 1 extra inventory space than usual, and that's because I don't have a TBow and Scorching Bow switch. I just have the Scorching Bow. So I was able to bring in an extra angler. Everything else in the inventory is mostly the same though, just downgraded. So when the larvae come out when it's non-shield phase, I like to deal with them as soon as possible. It is beneficial to leave them until they're close to the boss, as just like in shield phase, it does do damage to the boss. However, when it's non-shield phase, it does very minimal damage. Exhibit A right here, that did 10 damage. So trees form right away. I hit one of them, and then I go back on the boss and make my way to another tree, hit that after a couple of hits. Priority number 1 is staying in the orb, and I'd say priority number 2, well, kind of 1A, 1B, is to hit the correct overheads for when the projectiles are coming. The projectiles are going to deal the most damage to you, oftentimes more so than tanking a singular stomp. There we go, wave 4 complete. We even got the holy water mechanic right there, although it was not needed. We did get a bit of prayer back, I suppose. Wave 4, just one more delve until we get to the car phase on Delve 5. kind of using the word delve and wave interchangeably, sometimes even level. You know what I mean. Again, deal with the larva nice and early. Mage boulder comes out, so mage, range, mage, and then there's a range auto attack. When dealing with the projectiles, I heavily rely on game sounds. Oftentimes, I'm not even looking at the projectile coming towards my character. I simply look for the color of the boulder so I know what prayers I have to click first, and then I turn my eyes and attention to other things, whether that's dealing with the larva, maybe breaking the shield, or a melee punish, what have you. Or simply repositioning away from the acid blood. Now I did place my rune pouch in an interesting position. That's typically where I would put the emerald light. Hopefully I don't misclick that. I did want to put the rune pouch there as a placeholder though, so that everything else remains in the same location. So right there, melee punish came out. I always go for the melee punish hit first, and then worry about the prayers. When the boulder is thrown in the air, there is ample time to react to the prayers. Especially in waves prior to wave 7, the projectiles really don't come at you that quickly. Again, same concept with the trees, hit one nice and early, do what we need to do in between, and then hit the second tree to proc the orb. I also utilize control clicking right there to force my character to walk, despite my run energy being on by default. If you have trouble staying within the orb, make sure to just prioritize moving and dodging as necessary and worry about hitting the boss later. Here we go, wave 4 completed. Let's head on over to wave 5. First car phase. Now this is typically where the twisted bow really shines in car phase in combination with Elite Void, because it can hit like a truck. Once again, same concept, same thought process. Melee punish along with the boulder. Do the melee first, dodge the tile, or dodge the rock under you, and then worry about the prayers. We got larvae coming in during shield phase on the other side. Let's carefully make our way over. I like to deal with the melee larvae as soon as possible, oftentimes not even waiting for them to get to the boss, as sometimes you have awkward pathing and end up walking into poison tiles, which is just quite annoying. Also, oftentimes when shield phase ends, the boss will melee you right away if you're within range, which is quite annoying. So here we are on wave 5, car phase. There's no car slam attack, but I do move behind the rocks just out of habit. So right there, I had the presence of mind to deal with the 2 ranged larvae before I dealt with creating the orb and hitting the trees there. That is something you can do if you become more comfortable with, but in the context of a Delve 1 through 8 run, letting a couple of larvae in is not too big of a deal. It's really up to you to decide whether you can safely address the larvae or not, but letting the occasional one in through is not going to make or break your 1 through 8 run. So right there, a little bit of an error, but luckily we got away in time to not get run over. And we finished Delve 5. Okay, that was not too much of an issue, I don't think. I just realized I've yet to utilize my blowpipe. Here on wave 6, we are going to have to concern ourselves with the car slam. Okay, so mage boulder. So we know it's mage first. And here we are in shield phase. Again, larvae are spawning in from the other side. I don't know if this is always the case, but I do note that they have a tendency of showing up on the other side from where you're located. So we're going to lure the boss into the corner here, and there should be one rock, yep, that we can stand behind. So right here, I made a mistake and I dodged the other way to get away from the car. And as such, I put myself too far away from the rocks. This isn't ideal, obviously, but, you know, I didn't panic. I understood that I was going to tank one car slam, which ultimately wasn't even that much damage. Here, I'm making another error. I hit a tree that was too close to me, so I tanked 2 shockwave slams. But as long as you don't panic and you understand the mistakes that you're making and how much damage you might take, simply just play around that fact, you know, don't panic. So making a couple of mistakes here, I'm just going to eat my sharks to stay at a pretty healthy threshold. Right there, I calculated that I was able to get rid of that melee larvae in time and get out the way. Again, if you don't think you can make it, don't go for it. You know, one larvae sneaking in isn't going to make or break your 1 through 8 delve run. During car phase, obviously, you need to see where you need to bait the boss to and where you can hide behind the rocks. But do your best to keep up your damage, because during car phase, you have 100% accuracy. So that's the best time to do damage. And that's the reason why the Elite Void shines. So here on Wave 7, the projectiles are going to be much quicker. So before I even think about hitting the boss back right there, I needed to make sure I was ready to hit the prayers. After that, I can then refocus on the boss. So for that melee punish right there, I wasn't entirely prepared. I am having a little bit of difficulty talking through this and doing the actual boss. So I was slow to react there. But I recognized that I was slow to react there, and instead of ripping my full 4-way switch, I decided to just melee at once. Getting the melee punish damage with full switches is obviously ideal, but don't go out of your way for it for sure. Okay, I'm just now realizing that I should probably use my blowpipe. So I did spec right there. I've been using a light barrier too because I'm so accustomed to using my spec, but currently I'm just not accustomed to using the blowpipe, so perhaps using a Venator ring or an Archer's ring would be more beneficial for me here. But it is what it is. So tree spawn again right away. Find one to hit real quick. Again, being wave 7, the projectile's quicker. I prioritize that over anything else and get the orb spawning. Here I deduced that I can safely get rid of those larvae while staying in the orb. That was a relatively safe thing to do. So 0 damage all around. And honestly, the more on top of it you are during these early waves with dealing with the larvae, the more room for error you have during wave 8, where things get a lot more hectic. So there we are, Delve 7 complete. Let's hope we can correctly do this Delve 8. I think I'm going to open up with a blowpipe spec. I don't know. I think that just makes sense. Looks like I didn't bring Death Charge either. I swapped out the runes in my rune pouch. So that was a mistake. We don't have Death Charge. But then again, we also haven't been using our spec. So I guess it all works out. So just as I was saying earlier, prioritize the boulders, especially on wave 8, right, when it's double boulders. What I do here is I prioritize movement first, and then the prayers. During the third and fourth hit splats of the projectiles, you know they're going to be back-to-back of the same attack style. During that, I would make use of that little extra window of time you have to do what you need to do, whether that's moving, clicking the boss, clicking something like the larvae, or just simply eating. That is the best time to do so. On those second set of boulders, I did mess up a bit there. Again, I just want to stress I'm having a little bit of difficulty talking through my thought process here and actively doing the boss, so we're making do of what we can. Alright, we're going to make use of the blowpipe specs here for once. Very nice. I do wish I brought Death Charge, but evidently I did not. My prayer is a little bit concerning. I probably should have brought another prayer pot, but I think we may be okay. So right there, I messed up because I needed to move around the rock, and I understood I was going to take one attack of those projectiles off prayer. Again, just simply don't panic though. I was ready for the next prayer, so I didn't eat 2 hits, I just ate 1. We forgot to re-up on our prayer or our ranging dose here, so we'll do that now. I'm kind of fumbling a bit, but again, all the times I stayed on top of the larvae earlier is now paying off as I can afford to make a few more mistakes. I do have 50 spec again, I'm kind of looking to blowpipe, but looks like it is not needed. There we go, a 1 through 8 delve completion, utilizing the Scorching Bow and Elite Void without the use of a Twisted Bow or a ZCB. Oh, you know what? We didn't even take a look at our loot yet. There we have it. Nothing too crazy on this run, unfortunately.